All right, today we are going deep. We're unpacking the incredibly influential and, yeah, often controversial ideas of the entrepreneur and thinker Peter Thiel. We're going to follow a worldview that kicks off with a critique of optimism, builds into this super radical theory of business, and then it ends with a challenge to the very foundations of modern society. So buckle up. Okay, so let's jump right in with an idea that kind of goes against everything we're taught. I'm talking about one of our most cherished virtues, optimism. We're always told to be positive, look on the bright side, but what if that advice isn't just a little off? What if it's actually dangerous? And just think about that for a second. This isn't about being a downer just for the sake of it. It's about questioning that kind of blind, naive optimism, the kind that might actually be stopping us from seeing what's really going on. It's the kind of thinking that just assumes things will work out on their own, with no real plan or basis in reality. So this quote, it's a gut punch. It comes from a U.S. prisoner of war, James Stockdale, and it really gets to the heart of this concept that's now known as the Stockdale paradox. He had a front row seat to one of the most brutal situations imaginable, a Vietnamese POW camp. And he saw who made it out, and it was not who you'd think. Stockdale was a prisoner for 8 years. 8 years. And he noticed this grim pattern. The prisoners who were the biggest optimists, the ones who kept saying, we'll be home by Easter, we'll be out by the 4th of July, they were the ones who died of a broken heart when those dates came and went. The survivors? They were different. They never lost faith that they would get out eventually, but, and this is the key, they also stared the horror of their day-to-day reality right in the face. So that's the crucial difference right there. There's a massive gap between real hope and what some psychologists now call toxic optimism. Hope is about faith, for sure, but it's a faith that's grounded. It sees the problems, it acknowledges the obstacles. Toxic optimism just takes a good outcome for granted. It completely ignores the warning signs, and it stops us from making a plan B because it whispers in our ear that we won't need one. This is exactly the mindset that leads people to bet everything on a single roll of the dice without preparing for the possibility of failure. And this is exactly where Peter Thiel's philosophy kicks in. He takes this idea, this distinction between vague hope and grounded faith, and he blows it up into a full-blown framework for how we should think about the future. Not just how to survive it, but how to actually build it. Now, this chart might look a little academic at first glance, but trust me, it's incredibly powerful. Thiel maps out 4 ways of seeing the world using 2 axes. First, you've got optimism versus pessimism. Pretty simple, do you think the future will be better or worse? But the other axis is the real kicker. Definite versus indefinite. A definite view means you believe the future is something you can know and shape with a plan. An indefinite view means you see the future as this vague, random thing that just kind of happens. And the magic happens in these 4 boxes. According to Thiel, this is where most of modern America and Europe live, indefinite optimism. It's this general feeling that, yeah, things will probably get better, technology will advance, progress will just happen. But there's no grand vision, no concrete plan. It's like hoping to get rich off a stock portfolio you never actually manage. Then you have definite pessimism. Here, you believe the future is knowable, but you think it's going to be bad. So you prepare. Think of a society that knows it's going to run out of a resource, so it starts carefully rationing and saving. They have a plan, but it's a plan for decline, not for growth. And then there's this one, indefinite pessimism. This is just despair. It's the belief that the future is not only going to be awful, but it's also completely unpredictable. So why bother doing anything? It's total paralysis. Just try to enjoy today because tomorrow's a lost cause. Which finally brings us to Thiel's ideal, the mindset he believes is behind every great leap forward in human history, definite optimism. This is the powerful conviction that a better future isn't just possible, it's achievable, but only if you have a bold vision and a concrete, deliberate plan to make it happen. It's the polar opposite of buying a lottery ticket and just hoping for the best. It's designing the winning machine yourself. And this is not just some fuzzy, feel-good idea. It is a blueprint. The Apollo program is the perfect example. Kennedy didn't just say, hey, it'd be cool to explore space someday. No, it was a definite, audacious goal, put a man on the moon, and bring him home safely by the end of the decade. And it was backed by meticulous planning and relentless execution. That is definite optimism in the real world. All right, so how do we take this grand idea about history and apply it to something like, say, a startup? Well, Thiel does exactly that. He takes this concept of definite optimism and aims it right at the heart of business. And in doing so, he basically throws a grenade at one of the core ideas of capitalism. So Thiel says there are only two kinds of progress. The first is horizontal, or going from 1 to n. This is basically copying things that already work. You take a successful idea and you scale it up. You open another restaurant, you build another smartphone app that looks like another app. Then there's vertical progress, going from 0 to 1. This is doing something brand new, creating something that has never existed before. For Thiel, true innovation, the stuff that really changes the world, is always vertical. It's always 0 to 1. So how do you find those 0 to 1 ideas? Thiel says you start by asking yourself this question. It's a tough one. He believes that every great business, every true monopoly, is built around a secret, an important truth that most people just don't see yet. A good answer to this question is your treasure map. And that contrarian mindset leads us right here to his most famous or infamous statement. Everything we learn in business school tells us that competition is healthy. It's the engine of the market. Thiel says, no, that's totally wrong. Competition, he argues, is brutal. It just grinds away your profits, forces you to think short-term, and makes everyone's products basically the same. The real goal isn't to beat the competition, it's to make competition irrelevant. And this chart just lays it out perfectly. A company stuck in a competitive market is just in a constant state of war, fighting for survival. There's no room to breathe, no profit to invest in big, crazy ideas. But a monopoly, in Thiel's world, is a company that's created something so uniquely valuable that it has no real competitors. And that gives them the freedom to think long-term, to pay their employees well, and to fund the next big 0 to 1 project. So for him, a monopoly isn't a sign the market is broken, it's the reward for creating something amazing. Okay, we've laid out a pretty bold business strategy, but to really get what Thiel is about, we have to take a pretty big leap now. We're moving beyond business and into political philosophy. Because what if definite optimism and building monopolies aren't just about making money? What if they're actually part of a much bigger, much more radical project to completely rewire society itself? So, for the last few hundred years, our world has been built on the ideas of the classical Enlightenment, the age of reason. This is the stuff that gave us individual rights, democracy, the scientific method, the belief that if we all deliberate and follow a rational process, we can solve problems and make progress. But there is another school of thought emerging, and it's a pretty controversial one. It's sometimes called the Dark Enlightenment or Neo-Reaction, and it directly attacks those core principles. It looks at reason, democracy, and equality, the very pillars of our world, and says these are actually holding us back, and it proposes a completely different set of guiding forces. At its core, this philosophy is fundamentally anti-democratic. It argues that democracy is messy, it's slow, and it's held captive by popular opinion, which it sees as a huge obstacle to real progress. Instead, it favors systems where visionary leaders can use technology and run society more like an efficient corporation, without having to ask for permission. In this world, freedom isn't about having a say in your government, voice, it's about being able to leave and choose a different system, exit. And Thiel himself has been pretty blunt about his skepticism. This quote says it all. He sees a fundamental conflict between the collective decision-making of democracy and the kind of radical individual and technological freedom that he thinks is necessary to really push humanity forward. To him, the will of the many can crush the progress driven by the brilliant few. So, when you strip everything else away, this is what it all comes down to. A fundamental clash between two completely different ways of seeing the world. It's a battle between the legacy of the last 300 years and a new philosophy that wants to tear it all down and build something else. The classical Enlightenment gave us the age of reason, a world that values debate, process, and systems designed to build consensus. The Dark Enlightenment, on the other hand, says we're moving into an age of will, an age where progress isn't driven by committees and votes, but by the raw conviction and decisive action of individuals who have a vision and the power to make it a reality. And now, finally, we can see definite optimism for what it truly is. It's not just a business tool. It's the operating system for this age of will. It's the philosophical justification for a small group of people to say, we know the right way forward, and to build that future, bypassing the slow, messy process of debate. It reframes the imposition of a singular vision not as authoritarian, but as necessary, as progress. And that leaves us right here with the enormous and maybe unsettling question at the center of this entire philosophy. If we move away from a world built on reason and collective agreement and into one built on the power of will, it forces us to ask, whose will, whose vision gets built, and who gets to decide? This isn't just about technology or business anymore. It's a question that cuts to the very core of how we organize ourselves as a society.